What's going on, guys? It's your boy CMB. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, smash that like button, and let's get into this one really quickly. Now, guys, once again, we are talking about Terence "Bud" Crawford. Now, I did a video a while back on, how some of the Hall of Famers seem to be picking Terence "Bud" Crawford to be their favorite going into this fight with Errol "The Truth" Spence Jr. The latest to do it now is Canelo Alvarez and Triple G. They both picked Terence "Bud" Crawford as the favorite leading up to this fight. Now, we also discussed how the grassroots fans seem to be leaning more towards Errol to win the fight. And in the video, I explained, I gave my take on it, how I didn't think a lot of these guys, these OG boxers and these Hall of Famers were picking Terence "Bud" Crawford because they had malice in their heart for Errol. I thought that they were looking at it from a boxer standpoint, looking at the skill set, looking at what arsenal that both guys bring to the table, and then making an educated decision from that. And could some of those guys have malice in their heart? Of course they could, but I give people the benefit of the doubt. I said it before, I don't just jump to it's just pure hatred coming from people because they're picking someone else. That's not always the case. Sometimes it's the case, but that's not always the case. Now, Errol Spence Jr., does he receive hate? Absolutely. I've seen it in the press, I've seen it from some of the channels, I've seen it from some of the fans. He absolutely gets hatred in these streets, and I think that type of stuff really fuels his desire to become undisputed at 147 pounds. So that is duly noted that he does get that. So I want to just put that out there. But I think at the same time, Terence Crawford gets his fair share of hate as well. And I started seeing it a lot when Terence "Bud" Crawford, I think his time was almost up at Top Rank, and people were telling him, he needed to go to the other side of the street so he could get the big fight with Errol, and people were calling him out of his name because he wouldn't say certain things about Bob Arum. I remember that quite well, and it was coming from certain channels. I won't say any names because I don't really like to do that, but I did see, some hatred, people changing their tune about Terence "Bud" Crawford. They felt some type of way about him making, his financial decisions, with contracts and things like that of that nature. I did see a lot of people changing even more leading up to the Kell Brooke fight. When Kell Brooke came over to the US, he was doing his press tour, he was visiting some of these YouTube channels, and a lot of those guys were being swayed, thinking that Kell Brooke could possibly beat Terence "Bud" Crawford. And don't get me wrong, Kell Brooke is a extremely talented fighter. He's a big, strong guy. He has a great skill set. But then when he did meet up with Terence "Bud" Crawford, I think he was stopped in the 4th round, and the tune started changing again. They were saying that Kell Brooke was already washed. He wasn't the same fighter when he fought Errol "The Truth" Spence Jr. And honestly, you could say the same thing for when Kell Brooke fought Errol Spence Jr. He wasn't the same fighter. He did get his orbital bone broken. He went up to 160. I don't know why he did that, to face off against Triple G Gennady Golovkin, and he got his eye socket broken then. So, you could say he wasn't the same fighter when he faced Errol. But the fact is, he looked good, and going into that fight with Terence "Bud" Crawford, he looked rejuvenated, and Bud Crawford stopped him in 4 rounds, whereas Errol, I think he stopped him in the 10th round, if I'm not mistaken. So I've seen, people compare and contrast that, and they don't want to give Bud credit for that. I've seen it leading up to the Shawn Porter fight. A lot of people were saying that Terence "Bud" Crawford was afraid to face Shawn Porter. And then, the fight finally happens, and he stops Shawn Porter in the 10th round. And, the talk starts again. Shawn Porter wasn't the same fighter. and I beg to differ. Shawn Porter was one of the hardest working guys at 147. He was one of my favorite fighters at 147, and he always gave his all in a fight. He got stopped. His dad threw in the towel because he knew what was coming. Now, Errol Spence Jr., he had a tough fight with Shawn Porter, just like Crawford did, but he wasn't able to stop him. He did drop him. I think it was the 10th round as well, but he did go in and win that fight. So, like I said, there's a lot of hatred for Terence Crawford as well. People changing their tunes. And Terence Crawford is a dangerous fighter. You know, we know Errol Spence Jr. is a big fish. We know Errol Spence Jr. is built different. But this fighter, Terence Crawford, seen as the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world right now, he's a different specimen as well. I don't think Errol's ever been in the ring with a guy like that. And I can say the same thing, you know, from the other side. Terence Crawford's never met a guy like Errol the True Spence Jr. So that's what makes this fight so intriguing. That's what makes it so interesting. And that's why I'm still, you know, I'm still torn between who wins this fight. I just can't pick a winner because both of these guys are just that damn good. You know, I think the person who executes their game plan better, who doesn't make mistakes, will probably be the winner in this fight. You know, it's going to be a chess match. And I said it in another video, it could be, you know, one of those fights that's boring in the beginning because both guys don't want to make mistakes. So, does Terence Crawford get hate out in these streets? Absolutely. Does Errol Spence Jr. get hate out in these streets? Absolutely. But I think that just comes with the territory. But not everybody's hating on either fighter when they're giving constructive criticism or they're breaking down, you know, what each fighter brings to the table. So that's all I got to say about that, guys. You guys let me know what you think about Terence Crawford receiving hate in these streets. Let me know in the comment section, guys. It's the CMB. I'll talk to you guys in the next one, and I'm out. Peace.